الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Welcome to all brothers and sisters in attendance of the class, those watching worldwide, and of course, as we said last week, please do not forget to make dua for your Muslim brothers and sisters in Gaza and in other parts of the world as well. Any Muslim who says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, who's suffering, who's being persecuted, whose life is being threatened, property, wealth, land, honor is online. Any Muslim who is hungry, starving, any Muslim who's thirsty, a Muslim who's cold, those Muslims who are fighting and struggling for their lives in the hospitals, etc. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for all of our brothers and sisters, give them the patience to outlast those trials and those tribulations. And we ask Allah the Mighty and the Most High to allow them to have وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, for them to have the good outcome and for them to be on top in the end. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And of course we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to take revenge and to take vengeance against the oppressors and against the wrongdoers, whoever they may be. And all of those who support them, those who are verbal in their support of those wrongdoers, and those who are silent. Wallahu azizun dhu intiqam. We ask Allah to allow us to see that in our lifetimes. Allah al-Musta'an, the situation overseas, it is what it is. And as we have explained, I believe last week's khutbah, reflecting on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement, فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارُ, that the eyes don't go blind, but instead the hearts go blind. So the whole entire world is watching. And there are those who speak, there are those who keep silent, there are those who justify, there are those who argue, there are those who beg and cry, there are those who demand justice and equality. But I think on one level or another, all of us are included in that ayah. As if our eyes, are blind, but they aren't. We are seeing what's taking place, what's happening in the world, but we refuse to accept the reality and to speak out and to take a stance and to call a spade a spade. So there are many different manifestations of blindness of the heart, Allahumma musta'an. From them, unfortunately, Muslims expecting the wrongdoers and the oppressors who placed them in that situation to be their rescuers. That's a huge problem. Secondly, is a person thinking that that someone is going to change and become different just because they put on a three-piece suit and just because we're in the 21st century. All right? We know that many non-Muslims have accepted Islam. Many will accept Islam. But Allah clearly says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. Whether you warn them or warn them not, they are not going to believe. Okay? So the concept of Muslims and non-Muslims, how are Muslims treated? Are they equal? Have you ever been equal to these non-Muslim oppressors? Was there ever a time in which they considered your blood as valuable as one of their soldiers? So if they didn't believe that back then, hundreds of years ago, what makes you think they're going to believe that now? What makes you think that your blood is going to mean something to them and they're the ones who put you in that situation and allowed that situation and condoned and turned a blind eye? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So it's a very sad situation from so many different aspects with regards to the Muslims, our responsibilities, our duties, what's happening to our brothers and sisters, the massacre, the slaughtering, the outward disrespect and disdain for human life. And the list goes on. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. We ask Allah for help. We ask Allah to support our brothers and sisters there. And as we said, the Prophet ﷺ commanded us to speak out against the evil, to change the evil. And if we can't, then at least hate it in our hearts. And never ever allow our hearts to become blind, and never ever justify wrong and validate wrong and make an excuse for wrongdoers and make the victims the wrongdoers, okay? And if we do that, then indeed we will have imitated those people, because that is their master chess. That's their game that they play. They are the oppressors, the invaders, the occupiers, the terrorists, but they have a masterful skill and a talent and skill at making the whole entire world thinking that they are being wronged and oppressed and harmed and we're victims. Right? So never ever allow your heart to reach that level of blindness, right? In which the zalim becomes the mazlum. And many people have fallen victim to this. Allahumma musta'an. We ask Allah for help. We ask Allah to support all of the Muslims around the world, in Palestine and in other countries as well. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. All right, tonight's lesson, that'll be enough for the announcements for now, maybe towards the end of the class or during the Q&A. We're still in the Marjan, فيما اتفق عليه الشيخان. And we're coming up on the 1,000 hadith mile marker when Kitab al-Buyu'. Last week we spoke on what, Ali?
Last week we were speaking about what type of fruits can be sold.
What type of fruits can be sold? Some of the rulings on selling fruits and on buying fruits. Wholesale, retail, etc. Tayyib? Jazakallah khairan. What else did we speak on?
The conditions.
With regards to fruits that haven't reached their ripeness yet.
Yeah.
Can they be sold? Can they be bought? Can they be purchased, etc.? Khairan, inshallah. What else did we speak on, Amjad? We said we were moving to a new level of study and discussion, which was what? Riba.
Yeah, there were two types.
Two types of riba, which are?
One is just for wealth, and one is for barter.
One is for trading, and one is for?
Further.
Debt. Debt and? Trading or bartering. So they're called in Arabic?
Nasiya.
Riba nasi'ah. And secondly? Riba al-fadl. Riba nasi'ah is the type of riba that most of us talk about, speak about, learn about, and hear about. Especially when it comes to homes, mortgages. This is the price of this product or house or car or whatever, and you buy it in installments. You buy it with credit in the span of 20 to 30 years at a higher price. Is that lawful? Is that unlawful? You owe me money. I lend you money. The bank gives you money, but you have to pay it back with a... That's a tricky word. Don't even use that word. Don't say interest. What's important is you're paying back more than what? More than what you borrowed, right? You're paying back more than what you what? Borrowed. More than what you borrowed. There is extra on the debt, and that's an-nasi'ah, riba an-nasi'ah, and then riba al-fadl is, when it comes to bartering, is what? Exchanging goods. So we are selling dates. Where I have some dates, you have some dates, and we want to do what? Trade. We want to exchange the dates. What are the conditions of trading and bartering goods? Two goods that are of the same genus. Dates and dates versus dates and salt, or barley, or cash. Can one be superior quality, one being of inferior quality? Is it lawful for me to barter and to switch these goods and then grab them later on from you? Or does it have to take place in the sitting? That is what we have to focus on in these upcoming classes, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, with regards to the basic rulings of riba in al-Islam, and how we learn what the Prophet ﷺ has told us over 1,400 years ago and apply it to 2023 and the new modern synthesized central bank world. Everybody clear on this? And that which pertains to every single Muslim, and that which only pertains to a few Muslims. There are things that we'll learn just for the theory of them. And then there are things that we'll learn that you're going to deal with on a practical level. Because if I don't go to the farm to buy my dates, if I don't eat dates, if I'm not buying fruits from the distributor, I'm a host, I'm a retailer. I'm going to the supermarket buying bananas and peaches and mangoes and grapes. Versus I have a company, a juice company, okay, in which I go to the actual farmer. Everyone understand this? And even people who do have companies, they don't necessarily go to the farms because there are levels of wholesale and distributing. There are levels. Everybody clear on this or not? You're not always going to a mom and pops, type of joint every time to buy your stuff. You're not always coming in contact with local farmers. Everybody clear on this or not? We're talking about conglomerates, all right? So there are things that you're going to learn in theory, and then there are things that you're going to learn in theory and in practice. And it's like anything else in Islam. The rulings of the salah. You may never be an imam in your salah, ever. You may never, ever be an imam in your life. You don't have a wife, you don't have a child. You're never, ever leading other people in a prayer. But if you're taking a course in the rulings on salah, you still have to learn the rulings of what? Of the imam. Even though you're not an imam. And in your life, for one reason or another, it's a big possibility you'll never be an imam. It's a possibility you will be an imam one day, but it's no guarantee. But if you're taking the course and studying the book, you still have to learn the rulings of an imam. Even clearer example of this is the rulings of menstruation. A man says, I'm not a woman, I don't menstruate, I have no daughters, I have no wife, I'm by myself. There's no need for me to learn the rulings of natural blood flow. Right or wrong? The practicality of me learning the rulings of natural blood flow are what? Void. But you still have to learn the theory of that. If you're talking about completing a course and completing a book and going from A to Z. Are we all clear on this or not? And there are some things which you will need on the practical level. And in most cases, when it comes to the rulings of riba, on the practical level, you're going to need the rulings of nasi'ah. And the more knowledge of riba and nasi'ah, more than riba al-fadl. Everybody clear on this? Because most people today don't barter anymore. Very, very seldom. We find people actually what? Bartering goods. Trading goods in which no money is used whatsoever. When's the last time you've seen this? It could happen, let's say, for example, a yard sale. And your neighbor's also having a yard sale. So you see a old-fashioned rocking chair that you want, and you have an old-fashioned lawnmower. You don't want to spend no money. I want to get rid of this junk, but that's a nice chair right there. Can I trade the lawnmower for the rocking chair? No cash is on the table though. Everybody understand this or not? Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu alam. All right, anything else we discussed?
The dry dates and
Dry dates versus fresh dates. What would be the wisdom behind that prohibition? Bartering dry dates with fresh dates, Abir. What do you think would be the wisdom behind that prohibition?
No, fresh dates are they taste better and they also don't last that long.
That the fresh dates could become dry, they could spoil, they could rotten, and their value, their weight, their volume may what? Differ than that which is already dry, which isn't shriveling up anymore, so on and so forth. Tayyip? All right, anything else? Tayyip. All right, let's move forward with tonight's class. Inshallah ta'ala. Iqra. باب تحريم بيع الرطب بالتمر إلا في العرايا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال المؤلف رحمه الله تعالى باب تحريم بيع الرطب بالتمر الا في العرايا. حديث زيد بن ثابت ان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ارخص لصاحب العرية ان يبيعها بخرسها. حديث سهل بن ابي حثمة ان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن بيع الثمر بالتمر ورخص في العرية ان تباع بخرسها يأكلها أهلها رطبا. حديث رافع بن خديج وسهل بن أبي حثمة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن مزابنة بيع الثمر بالتمر إلا أصحاب العرايا فإنه أذن لهم.
طيب تفضل.
حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رخص في بيع العرايا في 5 أوسق أو دون 5 أوسق. حديث عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن المزابنة والمزابنة بيع الثمر بالتمر كيلا وبيع الزبيب بالكرم كيلا. حديث بني عمر رضي الله عنهما قال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن المزامنة أن يبيع ثمر حائطه إن كان نخلا بتمر كيلا وإن كان كرما أن يبيعه بزبيب كيلا أو كان زرعا أن يبيعه بكيل طعام ونهى عن ذلك كله.
طيب. خيرا inshallah ta'ala. So chapter 14 says باب تحريم بيع الرطب بالتمر إلا في العرايا. Prohibition of selling fresh dates for dry dates, except in the case of al-araya. So we benefit from this chapter is that even within the rulings of prohibited transactions, listen carefully, this is practical now. This is on the ground now. Even within the rulings of prohibited transactions, including riba. Riba is a prohibited transaction. There are exceptions. There are times in which there is an exception. Istithna fil hukm. Okay? And that's very important with regards to the flexibility of fiqh and the Islamic legal system and judicial system. There are times in which there are exceptions to the rule. And this exception is in that which is called araya. It says here in the footnotes, al-araya, the selling of fresh dates still over the palm tree by means of estimation for dry plucked dates. And it is also an exception. I.e., as if this exception was made to remove the what? Hardship and difficulty upon the farmers. Showing is that removing hardship and difficulty is from the aims of the Sharia. And when it comes to money and wealth and buying and purchasing, a mufti can reach a conclusion. He can make ijtihad through different pieces of evidences, different types of rationale, and also from this. And this is applicable to those fatwa of those scholars. Not saying those fatwas are right or they're wrong. I agree or disagree, but this is a tool that they're using with regards to those who allowed Muslims to purchase homes with traditional mortgages. The muftis who have allowed Muslims to purchase homes with traditional mortgages. One is going to say, كيف جاز هذا؟ هذا يجيز الربا يبيح الربا أعوذ بالله معاذ الله. He's saying riba is lawful. He's deviant. He's misguided. He's telling the Americans, the Muslims in America and Canada, to buy homes with mortgage. Haram, astaghfirullah. No Muslim is going to outwardly, blatantly allow riba from the gravest of sins. But those muftis, they're saying this proof, that proof, this situation, and the extreme difficulty and hardships that the Muslims have, perhaps an exception is made with conditions. You have no other house. There's a need, etc., etc., etc. So if the Prophet ﷺ made an exception with regards to date farmers, then obviously those muftis, they're going to say then there are going to be exceptions with regards to other types of hardship and difficulty that the Muslim is going to face. We're on the same page or not? Moving forward. Under any circumstance, does that mean it's lawful for you to get a house on a mortgage? We did not say that. We said those ulama who have given that fatwa. And we've explained that in detail in several parts. The rulings on houses and mortgages, traditional houses and traditional mortgages. You can find it on our website, HadithDisciple.com. Moving forward. So there's several hadiths mentioned in this chapter. And before we move forward, we see that there's a difference between dry and fresh. There's a discrimination between dry and fresh. And when one product or two products are of the same genus, but one is fresh, one is dry, the ruling is going to change. And so one could generally apply that to anything else. Dry versus fresh. And there's reasons why. There are reasons why. Something that's frozen, something that's fresh, the weight it spoiling, it being in a can, it being vacuum sealed, right? Moving forward. First hadith, hadith 985. حديث زيد بن ثابت أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أرخص. هذا يدل على أنه يرخص وأرخص وبينهما فرق. أرخص يرخص، رخص، في فرق ولا في ترادف؟ ترادف. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أرخص لصاحب العرية أن يبيعها بخرصها. Narrated Zayd bin Thabit, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed the owner of Araya to sell the fruits on the trees by means of estimation. I can look at the date palms, such and such, this bundle, 25 kilos, give or take. No more than 25, no less than 20. Mathalan, as an example. So this hadith goes to show is that there are times in which estimation is used in Islam. Taqdir, estimation. And that is an Islamic principle. And everything in Islam does not have to be exact. You understand? There are times in which estimation, guesstimation, educated guess is considered in Islam. That's very important with regards to today's modern times. Moving forward. حديث سهل بن أبي حثمة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن بيع التمر بالتمر أو نهى عن بيع الثمر بالثاء المعجمة بالتمر بالمثنى الفوقية ورخص في العرية أو المثلثة الثمر مثلثة بالتمر ورخص في العرية أن تباع بخرسها يأكلها أهلها رطبا. 986 narrated Sahl bin Abi Hathma. Allah's Messenger ﷺ forbade the selling of fruits. And what's meant by fruits? Fresh dates. He forbade the selling of fresh dates for dried dates, but allowed the sale of fruits on Ariyah by estimation in the trees, and their new owners might eat their dates fresh. So the tree being sold as a whole, and the dates being included with the tree, and them eating them fresh. Hadith 987, Hadith Rafi' ibn Khadij wa Sahl ibn Abi Hathmata أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن المزابنة بيع الثمر بالتمر إلا أصحاب العرايا فإنه أذن لهم. Narrated Rafi' ibn Khadij and Sahl ibn Abi Hathmata, may Allah be pleased with them both. Allah's Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم forbade the sale of al-muzabana, i.e. selling of fruits for fruits, except in the case, and that's the translation issue here. It says here, نهى عن المزابنة بيع الثمر بالتمر. In Arabic it says selling thamar, fresh dates, with dry dates. And the English translation says the selling of fruits for fruits. Now that's very problematic. Obviously in English, a date is a what? A fruit. Dry or fresh. Period. But here, according to these hadiths, the ancient Arabs, they called fruit, they used the word thamar for dates. That was their staple fruit. And they only called it fruit when it was fresh, rutab. And if it was dry or semi-dry, they didn't call it thamar, but they called it tamar. So this translation is definitely misleading here. Except in the case of Ariyah, he allowed the owners such kind of sale. Hadith 988, Hadith Abi Hurayrata, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رخص في بيع العرايا في 5 أوسق أو دون 5 أوسق. Narrated Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم allowed the sale of dates of Ariyah, provided that they were about 5 awsuq, 5 wasaqs, approximately 675 kilograms or less in amount. This hadith shows and proves is that the sale and the allowance and the permission wasn't absolute. Rather, it was restricted, a certain amount. And this also is a proof and an evidence for certain muftis who have allowed certain levels and percentages of interest. In the case of need and necessity, as long as it isn't gross. As far as if it's gross, then absolutely not. As far as if there's a need, if it's a necessity and it's manageable, minimal, then everyone understand this? Is that it isn't open and to take globs and globs. And this is very important to understand the issue of the housing situation and the mortgaging. What type of house are you getting? Is there a need for you to get this house? Do you have an alternative? I would understand this. And the same applies to a vehicle. You don't have to get the lowest quality vehicle, a lemon or an egg, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you go out and get Bugatti, or something crazy, right? There's a limit, right? There's a what? There's a limit. Everyone understand this? And that's an Islamic principle. Moving forward. Hadith Abdullah ibn Umar رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن المزابنة والمزابنة بيع الثمر بالتمر كيلا يبيع الزبيب بالكرم كيلا. Hadith 989, narrated Ibn Umar رضي الله عنهما, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade al-muzabana. And al-muzabana is the selling of fresh dates for dried old dates by measure. And the selling of fresh grapes for dried grapes by measure. And the wisdom behind this is that the fresh grape or the fresh date can heavier with water. It can shrink, it can rot, etc., etc. Everyone understand this? Tayyib, and that's a long discussion with regards to the buying and the selling of grapes. The buying and the selling of grapes, and that is extremely applicable to the United States concerning where you can and cannot work, and what you can and cannot sell, and what contracts you can and cannot have. If you make a product or you provide a service, and people come to you for those products or those services that you think or feel will use them for haram, are you allowed to sell to them or not? Everyone understand this? Are you allowed to sell to them and work for them or not? You have a grape farm, vineyard, right? Oftentimes, many people coming to you are going to look, they're looking for your grapes for what? Can you sell it to them or not? You're not producing wine, you're not selling them or buying wine, you sell grapes. Anytime Dick and Harry can come in and buy grapes. But you know this person, he gives you his card. He tells you, we're looking for fine grapes, we're looking for this type of grape, that type of grape, so on and so forth. Is it lawful for you to sell them grapes? Everyone understand this? That's a long discussion in itself. Can I work as a security guard at a casino? A brother came tonight at the masjid, asked me, he said, I have no job. I migrated from this country, and the only job that I can find under the table is cleaning the church. A custodian at a church. Is it lawful for me to be a custodian at a church? He's Muslim. He doesn't believe in the worship of Christ or none of that batil that they believe in. He's just cleaning. So of course, many people are going to say, haram. Of course, you can't work in a church. You can't clean a church. But you can work as a custodian in a, anywhere else in which Allah is disobeyed and disrespected. You get the point that we're trying to make? You can't work in a restaurant that sells alcohol. You can't work as a cashier in Walmart or Target or Costco, etc., etc. Wherever you go, there's going to be some connection and some cooperation upon what? Sin. Everyone understand this? All right? So it's very interesting. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Last hadith of the chapter, he says, Hadith Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, قال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن المزابنة أن يبيع الثمر حائطه إن كان نخلا بتمر كيلا وإن كان كرما أن يبيعه بزبيب كيلا أو كان زرعا أن يبيعه بكيل طعام ونهى عن ذلك كله. Narrated Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade al-muzabana, i.e., to sell ungathered dates of one's garden for measured dry dates or fresh ungathered grapes for measured dry grapes, or standing crops for measured quantity of food stuff. He forbade all such bargains. As far as the explicit detail of al-muzabana, then that's going to come. Aside from what was already mentioned of the explanation of al-muzabana, just as we have explained mulamasa and munabadha, right? We explained those types of contracts. Munabadha and mulamasa. The garment that's thrown on you, the garment that's thrown at you, the garment that you touch, the garment that the seller tells you to touch, mulamasa. If you touch something and you purchase it with such and such amount, we explained that. So mulamasa, munabadha, muzabana, muhaqala, etc. All right. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding this chapter, وباقي روايات الباب بمعناه وفيها ذكر المحاقلة والمزابنة وكراء الأرض وهذا نؤخره إلى بابه. He says we'll speak on those things in detail in their proper chapters, meaning later on. طيب خير إن شاء الله. We'll stop here tonight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Jazakumullah khairan for watching and listening. Walhamdulillah.